Thanks for tuning in for this bonus episode. Collin Morris and I recently had a sit-down discussion about the coaching process, insights on locating a coach, training ideas, using trekking poles, and everything related to the Leadville 100. We first met at the Leadville 100 in 2021, and we've stayed in touch since. Collin is aiming for another successful finish this year in Leadville and has hired me as his coach. Simon and I are back to recording this week with some thrilling guests after a short break from uploading. We look forward to your continued support by listening, sharing, and liking on your preferred platforms. Without delay, here's Collin Morris and me. We hope you enjoy it.
Thank you so much for joining me, Brian. I wanted to have a conversation with you. Brian from Altitude Endurance Coaching. We've got a fun history together, kind of how we met, and we'll get into that as well. But Brian, thanks for joining us as my coach. I love having you a part of my training journey, and just excited to have a chance to chat with you a little bit more openly and kind of find out more about you, and also share a little bit about you with some of my listeners and followers, because I think you've got a lot to offer, and some of your successes with Moab and Leadville and many other things, and your coaching roster is fantastic, and would just love to be able to spread the word about what you're doing as well.
Thanks, Collin. I appreciate it. Glad to be here and maybe turn the tables a little bit. I'm normally on the interviewee side, but I'm not opposed to being interviewed, and I appreciate the invite. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me a little bit about, I know a little bit of your background with triathlons, and obviously you've got a storied past with running and stuff, but how did you find running, and what led you into that specific portion of like the endurance athleticism?
It's a great question, Collin. I've been a lifelong runner. I just put a post up. I don't know. I got pictures of me in like middle school running in like Van Cortlandt Park in New York City, cross country, like state meets, regional meets. And it's just kind of always been a part of a part of my life, quite honestly. I at an early age, middle school, a standout runner, athlete, and it just carried over to be again an integral part of my life, something that I was always able to fall back on, even when other areas of my life were falling apart or in disarray, where I had some struggles or even some successes. Running has always been a part of my life, and that's kind of where I got my roots from. I'm dating myself, but I'll be 50 here in the next few weeks, and so that's about 40 years of athletics. I did take a 10-year sort of hiatus from specific running to do triathlon, like you mentioned. But otherwise, sport has always kind of been in the background of everything I've ever done.
Nice. So I know a little bit of your history, but how'd you find Leadville? What got you into ultras?
2009, I raced Ironman Arizona. They had just changed it from, in 2008, it was an April race, and in 2009, it was a November race. Just got done racing that, and a lady at the gym who knows I'm a runner, kind of knows, a small town. I live here in Western Colorado, knows I'm a runner, knows I'm an athlete. She said, "Hey, I read this book." And she's like, "It was great. It was really interesting. But I really felt like it would connect with you." And just basically handed me the book at the gym while I was standing at the treadmill. And it was Born to Run. It was 2009. It was Born to Run. It was Christopher McDougall's book about Phil, the Copper Canyons, some of the folklore of the sport. And instantly I was hooked. I read it in, just a few days, a couple days. I skimmed through it. I reread it. I got it as an audiobook now. And I've listened to it over the years subsequently. And so that really kind of brought me to Leadville. So in 2010, prior to lotteries and all the drama that we have in the sport currently, I actually mailed Ken a check to a P.O. box at Leadville Legacy P.O. box in Leadville, Colorado. And I got a letter back from him a few days later, or a week later, whatever the snail mail took to get back to me. And it said I was accepted, and I probably should start running, right? So that was April or something along those lines. And I showed up. I showed up for the 50 miler that year in 2010. I did really well at it for Silver Rush, and then came back and ran and finished successfully actually in my best time ever at Leadville. was that first year, 2010. I ran sub 24 for, I want to say it was 85th place overall or something along those lines. Yeah,
Dang,
and
you had a sub 24. That's
sub
dope.
24 first year. And it was the year before Lifetime jumped in and really took over some of the branding. And so it's the old belt buckle as well. So I got one of the last old belt buckles in the large version of it. Um,
I do remember seeing that.
yeah.
I remember seeing that. So you saw it then, you saw that, and then was it the next year that when they let like 1,200 people on the trail?
No, so 2010, 2010 they introduced Lifetime, and the gentleman that runs Lifetime,
Yeah.
I think he biked that year, if I'm not mistaken. In 11, I personally had an unsuccessful year. It was my first DNF at Leadville, but it
Mm,
was only my second time. We had just had a newborn, and life was crazy. I just didn't have the fitness.
mm,
Hindsight's always 2020, right?
right.
But at the time, I thought I could just wing it. But anyway, but it was 2012 or 2013 when Lifetime fully came in. 2012 when they fully came
Gotcha.
in. 2013 when they might have overstepped their boundaries for what was an acceptable amount of people in Leadville and the race itself.
Yeah, and just full disclaimer, since we are going to release this on YouTube, no shade to be thrown. You know, there's a storied history for anybody curious. The history of Leadville is so vast and so rich. And then, of course, throughout any sort of history, there's going to be highs, lows, ups, downs, things that happened that went great, some other things that maybe didn't. So we all know that when you add in a new element like when Lifetime came in, there were some significant challenges as well as some really great things that happened. So, all that to say, I mean, it's pretty incredible how far it has come. And I don't know, would you agree with me that it seems like they've struck having raced it twice now and volunteered and seen some of the inside, the inner workings, it seems to me like Lifetime and Leadville have struck a pretty solid balance.
Yeah, they definitely figured it out. I mean, your journey, Colin, my journey, maybe somebody listening.
Yeah.
We all have learning experiences, and Lifetime had to show up to Leadville and learn as well.
Mm,
So to your
yeah.
point, um, no shade by any means.
Right. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's funny. I don't know that I really knew. I knew the story about the gym and the book, but I guess I didn't realize it was Born to Run that she handed you. I found Leadville through I think a YouTube doc and then Born to Run, and that's when it all kind of meshed together. And funny enough, I thought I watched a so Courtney Dauwalter's documentary where she did Tahoe 200, and I can't remember the name. It's the one everyone knows, but it doesn't have Tahoe 200 in the name. But anyway, it's where she did Tahoe 200, and I thought that they were in Leadville for some weird reason. That's how little I knew about running. I just saw trees and mountains and was thinking it was Leadville. So it's pretty funny. But that is how I through the book was how I connected all the dots. Hopefully, I'd love to run in Tahoe at some point because I grew up going there. So whether it's the 100K that they have or the 200 would be dope. Have you done any of the Tahoe races?
I have not. My only experience was a quick honeymoon trip through Tahoe on our way to San Diego and Las Vegas. But
Nice.
we loved it. But my wife and I were newlyweds, so we loved everything. But we
Of
loved
course.
Tahoe for the 2 nights that we spent there.
Any draw for you to go out into that neck of the woods for some running?
There is. So I was in Tahoe. Was I in 2021? I must have been in 2021 Tahoe. The year it was canceled just 5 days before because of the
Yeah.
Caldor fire. Um,
Yep.
and so I didn't actually get to go to Tahoe. I do
Okay.
have a desire to circumnavigate the lake,
Hmm.
and so at this point, the courses have changed and modifications have been made because of that
Hmm.
fire and some other Forest Service issues, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
That's my understanding of it, but
Sure.
don't hold me to that. Um, but in short order, yeah, I do have a desire to go run Tahoe 200. I'd love to go there and circumnavigate the lake. I think
Yeah,
that's like my goal is to circumnavigate the lake. So maybe
dude.
if they change their course back, which I heard firsthand from a friend, Candace, that she's trying to get it back to that. So
Mm.
she understands the desire to do that as well.
What was the? It sounds like that. Did the course have to be altered pretty significantly?
Yeah, there's I don't know the actual direction or what side, like the northeast side or the northwest
Right, right, right.
corner, but some of the area is still unsafe and has unstable soils due to the
Oh, interesting.
fire, and so just to keep people off of that area, they've rerouted it as an out and back on one side of the lake. So
Oh, really? Okay.
you still get a ton of feel of the lake.
Of course.
But I think that for me, I was sold initially on the idea of going completely around the lake, and
Oh, 100%. Yeah.
so if I
Yeah.
had a choice and it the opportunity allows itself, I'd definitely go and try to circumnavigate the lake.
Well, it's good that she's going to do that because, there was, I'm from California originally, so I know the issues with fires and stuff. We went up and did, I went up and did like a hike slash run in Napa, sort of up towards Calistoga. And where we went through was all completely crispy. But what was kind of interesting is that as the growth started coming back, like you've got a massive tree, but then there's just trees growing at the base of it.
Mhm.
So it literally everything's just going to start over. So hopefully it's only a matter of time before they deem the soil runnable or whatever the
Yeah,
environmental aspect of it is, and they can get back out there because there's going to be a certain beauty to that as well. Being up on whatever you've been looking out, and now there's not going to be those trees maybe obstructing a view you didn't have before. Who knows?
yeah, definitely. We've seen. I live in Western Colorado, and we have our fair share of fires. We had one of the most horrific firefighter tragedies in the town that I live in, Glenwood Springs. 14
Really?
firefighters died in 1996 in a fire.
Dang.
The wind shifted and caught them all off guard, and I think 30 of them were running for the ridge for their lives, and 14 did not successfully make
Wow.
that ridge in a timely manner. They were getting chased by a 30-mile-an-hour fire that was just moving uphill. Um,
Wow.
so so we're not we're pretty familiar, unfortunately, with
Yeah.
fire burns and
Right.
regrowth and the way that process works. And there's still trails I run on locally here where it's unfortunate but still common to see a completely charred tall tree with some new
Right.
live growth underneath of it. So
Gotcha. So you have done Leadville a bunch of times. You've done some of your others. What are some of your other top running experiences, whether they're races or not? What are some of your other like top experiences as far as running goes?
gosh, in the ultra space, some of my favorites in the valley I live in. I live at one end of the valley in Glenwood Springs, and the far end of the valley is Aspen. And between us is the Roaring Fork Valley. We have the Elk Mountain Range in our valley, and
Hmm.
the first one in the Elks is called Mount Sopris. I have a view of it off of my corner deck
I've seen
of
that one. Yeah.
from my house, and I've summited that. I've lived in this town for 25 years. I've summited Mount Sopris roughly about 73 times, if I'm not mistaken. But I probably didn't start counting till I was into the 20s of
Right.
completion already. Some of those years were like 6 times a year, and just last year was just once. So it's always kind of hit and miss, but it's always fun. It's about a half marathon from the trailhead to the summit and back. So it's a great 13-mile day out on the trail, and you get something around 4,800 feet in vertical. So definitely challenging and
What
very
is the
much a
summit? What's the elevation of the summit?
12,953. So just about 13,000 feet.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and it runs
Yeah, it's
harder
a
than
good
a lot
run.
of it runs harder than a lot of the 14ers that people come here and
Hmm.
want to do because 14 is the allure, the number. A
Sure.
lot of the 13ers are more challenging and less popular, so they're kind of nice.
Yeah.
What else? I like to in the same valley in Aspen. I like to circumnavigate the Maroon Bells, which is called the Four Pass Loop. That's
Hmm.
about 25 miles or 28 miles. It's got just about 9,000 vertical feet in it, and you do four passes. You go into four different little valley ecosystems and cross, big creeks and just,
Yeah.
up and down. It's great. It's beautiful, and and the maroon bells, depending on which way you go, the maroon bells are always on one side of you if you go counterclockwise or clockwise.
Gotcha. And then
Yeah.
with that, are you carrying, are there water stops? Are you carrying a filter? What are you doing for that? Or are you just packing everything with you?
No, there's plenty of water available. Yeah, even in dead of summer. Yeah, even in the dry times, there's definitely plenty of water up there. Big waterfalls and just expansive views for miles and big creeks. There's a pretty decent sized creek, um, maybe
Nice.
30 yards across that you cross almost directly in the middle. So it's really helpful to have the water filter and just be able to pull from the creek.
Hmm.
Yeah. Other ones, though, to note events this past year, I guess I had a pretty big season. I did Ouray 100, which is in Ouray, Colorado, in the San Juan Mountains. It rivals a Hard Rock, which has just a lot more fame than Ouray, but that's 42,000 vertical and 100 miles. You have a 52-hour cutoff, and it's just spectacular. I mean, just views. And as long as the sun is up and you could see the views, they're spectacular. But I did go 2 nights on that. I did 50 hours to complete that. And that's just another neck of the woods in Colorado. That's just amazing to a place to be and to spend time and kind of
Yeah.
experience.
So I've only done one race that went into 2 nights, but the difference with that was that it actually was a Friday, like a Friday evening, like a 5 p.m.
Mm.
start. So you didn't have like a full day and a night and a full day and a night. So it's kind of cheating. Was that one like a morning race start?
Yeah, it was. Gosh, I guess it must have been Friday morning we started. I mean, a fairly regular time, 8 or 9
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
a.m. No headlamp needed, and like nothing outrageous. Not like a Leadville where you have to start with a headlamp and end with a headlamp sometimes, or not. But either
yeah.
way, yeah.
Um, so how much of that time would you say you were carrying poles? Because that's such a. I mean, I see people start Leadville with poles, and no shame in it. But the first 13 miles don't have any vert. So, but hey, everybody to each their own. But like in a race like that, uh, you're like vert the whole time.
It's a great question. If I'm being honest, we just had this conversation. We just had this conversation a few days ago. A friend of mine, Simon, was doing it as well, and he was giving me crap because I was actually trying to elect to not use poles. Um,
You were gonna go for it, huh?
and I did about, I don't know, something like 38 or 42 miles without poles before I
Mm,
picked them up. And I think that's when the fatigue just set in, and I was trying to use any means available to continue to push forward. I have nothing against poles. I don't mind them. I think in general our community could use poles more efficiently, and so that's my bug with poles sometimes.
mm,
I see a lot of people just carrying them, but not really putting any emphasis into
yeah,
physically using them. And if you're
right,
just carrying them for dead weight, then you might as well just not carry them, in
right.
my opinion. But that's, again, my opinion. But I don't. There's something about trekking poles, even at a Leadville, like with just Hope Pass and back,
Yeah,
where sometimes I still don't feel as efficient as if I didn't have poles. Um,
interesting.
I don't know if you've been on some super steep terrain and you like put your hand down and you
Yeah,
use like the third point of contact. It takes away from the first 2 points of contact, and I kind
yep,
of feel like that sometimes with my trekking poles as well. When I don't have them, my legs feel just more powerful. Of course, I'm expending more energy, and I understand the concept behind that, but um, but sometimes I'm not as comfortable using poles as I am without them. So it's just a thing. I was
dude. I've
the I was I
yeah,
was the anomaly at the start of Ouray. Everyone had poles on their back and took
yeah,
them out at the first climb, and
yeah.
they were like, "Where are your poles?" And I had to tell the same process of the same story. Like I don't really care to use them. I mean, it's a
Yeah,
preference and it's mine. But so I was the anomaly. So I see where you're
yeah.
going with the questioning, but I was sort of the anomaly.
Well, honestly, I really love the conversation because uh, I didn't know what trekking poles were the first time I did a race where I was the only one without them. And so it was the Tennessee Mile, which is the timed version of the Mid-State Mile, which is here in Franklin, Tennessee. So it's a 1 mile loop, but there's 2 climbs that are 19 degrees of vert. And so you go like flat, up, flat, down, flat, up, flat, down. And so you total 340 feet of gain in a lap. So after, and I was doing the 12 hours, my first ultra. And so they allowed you to pick up poles after like 6 hours. So I see people walking out with sticks, and I'm like, what I think are sticks. I'm like, dude, were we snow skiing? What's the deal out here, guys? Like, what, did I miss the memo? And and so I find out what trekking poles are. And at that point, I'm dying because I think the longest run I'd done before that was maybe a half marathon. So I'm already in over that. And so I picked up actual sticks. I mean, like, that's what we did. And funny enough, you should say like Tahoe. That's when I was hiking with my dad as a kid, we would grab sticks and use sticks. So that was my first experience with poles. And then next year I upped my game and got a real set of poles. But I totally agree with you. There was another race I was doing here locally called the Black Toe Run, which is notoriously bad weather each year in March. It's a 5 mile loop on private property. And again, it's a timed event. That first year that I did that, I did the 24-hour, and the trail isn't used all year because it's on private property. So it's not super compact. It's usually cut pretty close to the race. Well, that just makes it a trench when it rains.
Mm-hmm.
So you're sliding down like 6 feet at a time. Well, if you're trying to use poles going down something like that, it's making it harder. Because I found myself, if I lost my balance, I was trying to use the pole to catch myself. Anyway, it's a hot button topic, the poles are. But again, I always enjoy hearing different people's takes on it. I'm a huge fan of poles for going up. I'm very specific with how I use it, and like match my right arm's motion with my left leg's motion. So it's very like almost like an elliptical. And I find huge benefit from that.
It's a deliberate action, and
Yeah.
and quite honestly, I mean, it's gosh, in this day and age, you could go to YouTube and figure out how to use trekking poles efficiently, as
True.
opposed to just carrying them around. But you really want to place the tip of the pole at the heel of your foot and push behind you. Like if you look at ski racing as an example, like cross country ski racers, they never put the pole in front of them and pull through.
Yeah.
They start right at their right below their hips, and they push behind them to propel them forward. So
I'll be honest, I did not. It took, I don't know, like probably 2 years before you literally used the heel example. I figured that out on my own. I had no idea. Like so I was that guy. Probably you're up there.
I was that guy. I mean, I'm
yeah.
I'm not this holy saint martyr that just knew that, right? I was that guy for a while, and I was like, man, I'm not using poles, and then I was like,
right,
maybe I'm using them wrong,
Yeah. So the other thing to it is it's helpful. I will be straight up when I first did Leadville, my story. For those that don't know, you jumped in and helped pace my first year for my pacer who had an injury. So that's actually how we met. I was using those poles coming down the backside of Hope and up and over the front side. So for anybody not listening, Leadville 100s and out and back 50 miler, you have a massive mountain smack dab in the middle of it. 4,000 foot climb, you go from 9,200 to 12,500 or 12,600, somewhere in there, down and then back over. So I was hurting for my T-band pain at like the 25-mile mark, which is coming down power line, where I'm like cooking it and going, this is what I've been working for all year, man. I'm cooking this. And then I was like, oh, I can't walk. And I remember I told you that when I got to the aid station.
Yeah. You were literally cooking it. You were literally cooking it.
I was overcooked. Like, dude, stick a fork in me, I'm done. And the funniest thing was, though, the best advice, or the best thing that ever could have been said, this is totally a tangent, but I don't know if you remember, but I said to you, like, after we left, I didn't say anything to my wife. I didn't want to look like a wuss. But when you were walking me out, I said, I can't run. Like, I was like, I can't run. And you're like, that's okay. And that was the craziest thing to hear somebody. You weren't even concerned. You were like, that's okay. because the whole point of an ultra, you're gonna have issues, you're gonna figure them out, you're gonna problem solve. So let me ask you this. I'll pause right there. Talking about poles and how I use those as crutches coming down. When I told you that, what was it that made you just say, "That's okay"?
I mean, I think it's just sheer experience. I've paced others before, and you got out of the chair and you were moving forward, and that's really the biggest step at all. Um, you might not be able to, you weren't able to run in the moment that you said, I'm not able to run.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been there in that actual particular spot as well, on the course, I mean. But I was able to run later. But
Mm-hmm.
at the moment, I didn't think I could run later. I just thought I
Right.
can't run at all. And so, I thought I
Yep.
was going to be this long walk home. And sometimes it is a long walk home as long as you have the cutoffs ahead of you or behind you or you're good in the
Sure.
good. It could be a long walk home, but I don't think you can sell yourself short of your running ability as long as you're moving forward. So I think more critical in ultras is you have to be moving forward as opposed to worried about pace and or running
Mm-hmm.
or just moving forward is a good goal. Is a baseline goal for sure.
All right, so I have a question related to that in regard to training. I want to crack into that. The story that I'll just out myself is that I was using those poles like crutches on the way down Hope, both sides. I was hopping on one leg, which screwed that leg because my left leg wouldn't work because of my IT band. So
Mhm.
it was leg poles, leg poles, and it worked. I mean, I got down. But let me ask you this then. So with this experience that you have on from both years in endurance and now years with coaching and your vast, you've got like 30 something clients, is that right?
I'm a little bit over 25 right now. Yeah.
Over 25. Okay. So you're working with lots of different personality types, people, situations. If at all, how can you how do you train somebody to understand, help them understand like what you told me in that moment of that's okay because you knew that you'll be able to run later or you're just going to keep making that step forward. So how do you bake that into your training leading up to a race? Because you're not going to be there on race day for everybody to be able to tell them that. So like, tell me a little bit about your methodology behind training with that.
I have all amateur athletes. You and I both amateurs as well. None of us are getting paid. We're not making big checks. We're not making checks at all. If I get a buff from somebody, I'm pretty impressed with myself. Right. So that's the basis, right? And so so it's got to be fun. It's got to be entertaining. It it can't be always challenging. It can't always be work.
Mm,
There's days that we have to do the hard work. We have to do the long runs. We have to do some speed work, whether it's intervals or steady state work, whatever it might be for the season. Um, but also, it all has to come with a little bit of grace as well. Life's in the way. You have kids at home. I have kids at home. Our spouses work. We work. That all those things kind of play in, right? And we got to make it fit somehow. And so, um, just like I told you, like you said, I can't run, and I said that's okay. We're walking, right? And it's the same idea can apply to the training methodology. Like I got the message tonight. Someone said, I can't, I've been working 14 hours today. I can't get my 45-minute run in today. And she's like, can I move it to tomorrow? I'm like, great, move it to tomorrow. You know, no biggie. Life has to go on. She needs that job to pay the bills and
right.
pay the mortgage, the car, whatever it is, all those things. Um, and so I think that's kind of like the blanket of it all, that applies to the training process as well. Like, do what you can. It may not be perfect. You might not get the full. I might prescribe an hour run, but you might only get 35 minutes of it in. You might only get 4 of the intervals in instead of 6 or 8 or whatever the numbers are, right? But you've done something. You've put one foot forward. So whenever possible, do what you can, even if it's not perfect, even if it's not to the plan.
Right.
If even today for myself, quite honestly, I had a 10-mile run planned and I got 6 of it in. broken up. I got a 3-mile run in while I got the oil changed with the dog with me. Um, I ran across the street from the oil changing place, got on the bike path, ran 3 miles out and back with the dog, and then went to track practice and was able to, in between their sets, in their recovery, I was able to get laps on the track to
Mm-hmm.
get the remaining miles. It wasn't perfect. It's not what I prescribed for myself for today for a
Mm-hmm.
run, but I did something. I got moving when I was driving home. I was trying to celebrate my successes as opposed to being hard on
Mm.
myself for what I may have missed, right? And tomorrow's another day. Tomorrow's the 6 mile day, so maybe I could get an 8, right? Who knows?
Right.
But life's busy, and so I think that's kind of where I come from in the training process is do what you can. We're all trying our best, and I think that's
Yeah.
just important.
Okay, so lots to unpack there. It's so again so interesting. So you can only see things until you decide to look at somebody else's life through your own shoes. So I got into running through the Goggins mentality. Like I found it all. Everything kind of all came together at once for me. I ran a mile, actually it was a lap around the block. Yeah, it was a mile. So I ran a lap around my block. I said, "Well, I didn't die. I wasn't so bad." And then I think maybe the next day I did two, and then by the end of the week I had done 4 laps, and I was like, 4 miles. I was like, this is crazy. I can't believe, like, maybe I can do this.
Mhm.
But of course that bred into some of that really hardcore, like training style, like pushing through pain and the conversation.
Mhm.
I kept, like, I was running with a guy and he was talking about some of his injuries. I just met this guy randomly. He was talking about his injuries. And I literally asked him, I was like, how do you know the difference between like my knee hurts and an injury? Because at the time I was literally, my knee was like hurting while I was running, but I was like, this is kind of like part of running. Right. And that was the first time I'd done like 21 miles, anything over a half marathon I ended up doing a 21-mile run that day, but my knee was hurting for half of it. And so I was just like,
Mhm.
this is just how running goes. So how do you balance grace with training hard? Because if we choose big goals, and of course, as your client, like you know what I want to do, so you're going to train me according to that. So if maybe for somebody else, it may be different. But all in all, how do you maintain an approach that's balanced, and also achieve goals? Like how do you get the progress you want while also giving yourself
Mhm.
grace?
I don't know if I have a blanket answer for you, Colin.
Yeah.
It's a little tricky. I mean, I do have 20 plus clients, um, and it's really individualized. You'd be surprised on how individualized it is. I have to have a certain approach for you,
Mm,
as Colin as an athlete, and
right.
I can't hold that same um, concept to the other 20 plus athletes. I have
Hmm.
to take each athlete as an individual. Um, some people,
Interesting.
some people need a cheerleader. Some people need the drill instructor. Some people need a little coddling. Some people need a little grace, and the athletes bring something different to the table as well. Uh, I'm an example between two athletes. One, I'm trying to prod out the door. I'm like, hey, just get out for 30 minutes. And I know you're busy
Hmm.
and life's busy. And then the next athlete's folder I look into, I'm like slowing them down. They have that
Mm,
overachiever, they have that
right.
atypical approach. And I'm like, hey, it's time to back off. So
Mm,
I'm always really having to look at each athlete as an individual. And I don't know if anything really applies across the boards. I could see trends in groups. I know who my 4 overachievers are. I know who my 4 coddlers are. I know, the ones I need to be a
sure.
little more firm with. I got one guy, I just sent him a text message like, "Hey, I'm just checking in." And he's like, "Okay, I'll go run." Like, and
Mm,
we have an understanding now, but it
yeah,
took
yeah,
us
yeah,
getting there where he's like, "Okay, I get it." And he's like, "You haven't seen anything that you're texting me because you haven't seen anything, and
yeah,
that means I need to go run." He's like, "Got
yeah.
it." And he sends me a message back, check the file. I uploaded stuff and I ran today, And so it's just an understanding. So it's really kind of individualized. I mean, it shouldn't surprise you, but I think people do find that surprising that it's not like a one plan fits
Yeah.
all. It's way more different than that. And I was a little surprised too, quite honestly, when I started figuring that out a little bit easier. I was like, oh, that doesn't apply. Like I can't be the drill instructor
Right.
to everybody. They just don't respond the same way. I
Yeah.
can't be the cheerleader for everybody because they don't respond
Hmm.
to that. So
Very interesting. And so how long have you been coaching? Like how did that all kind of probably just has started to unfold over time? But how long have you been coaching athletes?
it was funny. I was running today, one of my runs, and I was thinking about our conversation now. And I
Hmm.
was thinking, like, I'm sure the conversation is going, how did you get into coaching, right? It comes up every now and then, and I get it. And I've kind of always been in a coaching sort of role, even in a profession. I was in the aquatics world for about 20 years. I was a pool manager, and I managed operations at a swimming pool. But really, what I did is I coached young people, lifeguards, on how to be a better lifeguard. And I mean, that's one
Mm.
aspect of it, right?
Sure.
I've coached high school cross country for a full cycle, 4 years. I saw some freshmen come in, and I saw them graduate. So I did that about a decade ago. I'm currently coaching high school track right now, um, as well as coaching athletes online in endurance sports. And so I feel like I've always kind of had a coaching role.
Yeah.
I've taught like spin classes and boot camp classes and core classes. I taught swim lessons in different levels, from triathletes to little um, tadpole swimmer kids, like first level one type of kids in an American Red Cross type of learn to swim program.
Right.
And so I've always kind of been in that space. In 2018, my wife, after I don't know, after 3 or 4 people came over to the house and had dinner with us, and then afterwards we talked about a training plan, and I built a spreadsheet for him, 24 weeks to your Ironman. And my wife's
Hmm.
like, the third time, she's like, what, are you making any money doing this? And I was like, that's ridiculous. Like, why? Like, I don't know. I'm just doing it as a friend, right? And so I started to think about it, and I jumped on Google, and I was like, "Oh, people are actually doing this. Like
Yeah.
it's a thing." I didn't really think it was a thing. I've
Hmm.
never, at the time, I didn't have a coach myself. I was just kind of coaching myself, as well as coaching other sports in different roles. And so it evolved. I did start coaching some of those people in triathlon that I was already kind of helping out. I started bare bones, quite honestly. I got
Hmm.
rolling. I put whatever money I made into building a website, and just kind of like taking it. I didn't want to lose any money doing it, like out of my regular
Sure.
job, because I was still working a full time job. But I didn't want to like accept any money yet, or reap the benefits of a payday from the side hustle, basically what it was.
Right.
Um, and so I was building the website and kind of just growing and growing and growing. Moved from spreadsheets to TrainingPeaks. And then a little more than a year ago, quite a bit more than a year, I guess a year and about 4 months ago, I went full time coaching. I worked myself out of my full time job into a part time role before I fully left that in December of 22, I think, roughly. And so I don't know. I guess a year and 4 months ago, I made the leap and grew enough to be able to jump to full time coaching. And I mean, again, I have children at home. I have a wife. I have a mortgage. I got all these things, these bills to pay, and there's a little bit of fear in there. Like, what am I doing?
Sure.
It's not just about me. Like, if I fail, whatever, I can eat ramen, but like, I still have to like put food on the table, and I still have to get gas, and like drive kids around, and get clothes and shoes for school, shopping, and all those
Yeah.
things, right? And so, I was a little worried about it, quite honestly, but it's been nothing but great ever since I made the leap. Hindsight's always 2020, and I probably should have done it a long time ago, but you never
Hmm.
know until you try, right? So that's kind of like the history of how I got going. I did work for a couple entities last year, um, different coaching companies, and we just kind of parted ways and moved different directions. And so
Yeah.
now I'm back. I'm back on my own, and I'm making a real hard push to continue to stay in this space, and making some good strides. So I'm excited for things to
Yeah.
come.
Yeah, well, it's super crazy that the coaching landscape is like for the consumer is the Wild West because you can Google it. I mean, who knows what you're going to find? You're going to find somebody with like a random report generator or somebody that's paid for SEO to come to the top and sell you their plan. Or you're going to find it through social media and you go to their bio and it says they have completed a marathon and they're a self-taught coach,
Mhm.
and or your friend that does it for free. Um, that writes things down for you, or you've got maybe some I won't name any names, but there are professional athletes who also will have coaching opportunities, and those are either going to be a little bit more exclusive, obviously more because you're paying from a professional, accomplished runner. So it's going to be a different style there. Or then you have conglomerates, kind of like the Boundless guys with Leadville.
Mhm.
Um, so explain to me what it's like having to make your way. Is it mostly word of mouth? Are people coming to you through social media? How? Because I discovered you essentially by word of mouth, but I discovered Adam, the guy who I referred you to, from a Facebook page through an athletic brewing ambassadorship
Mhm.
program. Because I said I'm doing Leadville, and he says I like Leadville, and then so it's like the way we connect is these things are so organic.
Mhm. That's interesting. It's always evolving. Initially, most of my successes early on, when I was still doing it as a part-time job and still had a full-time career, was all word of mouth. And the community was smaller as well. So ultra running is generally is growing like 300% year over year over
Right,
year over year. And so
right,
we're just oozing out brand new fresh athletes that are just trying to absorb as much as they can. And there's a
sure.
lot of content out there for them to absorb. And
Yeah.
I don't know how you navigate that in this day and age. I'm fortunate. I'm fortunate that I'm not navigating it. I feel fortunate that I'm not navigating that scene right now,
Hmm.
because it is pretty crazy. And you do bring up a great point. Um, but I am starting to see some. I'm starting to reap the benefits from social media, and so I do an intake form. I'm sure you filled it out. You've
Hmm.
probably filled it out a couple times, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
But in short order, I fill out a form, and one of my last questions is, "How did you hear about us?" Because I just need some feedback on what's
Sure.
working and what's not working. And most recently, I'm getting social media as the answer. So
Mm.
it's kind of interesting to see. Um, but it was word of mouth. I think a there's a ton of people in the space in social media, but I think you could do your homework on somebody currently and figure
Yeah.
out how legit they are, if they're doing it as a side hustle or not. Um,
Sure.
and there's nothing wrong with the side hustles. Just I think what you're looking to get out of a coach is what you should be looking for in that coach. I
Right.
suggest for all athletes that are looking for a coach to interview 2 to 3 coaches, do some research on. Um, what they know, what their certifications are, what their CEUs are, what they're doing to continue their education in the space, how committed to it are they? Are they just holding 10 athletes because they have to go to their accounting job all day? As an example, I don't know what coaches do as a real time job, but are they working 40 hours at another job and just doing your job as a side hustle? Um, or are they, where are they coming from? What do they have to offer you? What are their experiences and certifications?
So your coaching practice, I think, is probably the most well put together. I've worked with four different coaches now, and enjoyed things about each of them and found challenges with each of them. Yours has been very smooth. Working with TrainingPeaks, I mean, like I went out and did my intervals tonight and had them, which actually went really well, by the way. I didn't put that in the notes yet, but they actually went really well. Um, but having that there, having it all in TrainingPeaks, I mean, that's just like that's pretty sweet deal. The meeting links that you have, the different things, just the way that you put that all together. So it's pretty easy for me to see that if you're willing to put in that work to put together your program, then that much care is also going to be put into me as an athlete. So I think you make a good point that you should be able to find out if somebody's legit relatively quickly. But let me ask you this, kind of chop this up for me. If you were to go out today, let's say you are a moderately experienced runner, new to moderately experienced, and you're like, well, I've heard lots of people talking about these ultra things. I've kind of liked running, and you're going to go out into the space. You follow a bunch of people on social media. How would you go about finding a coach in this day and age? If you're just put yourself in somebody's shoes, let's say you're not already a coach.
That's a great question. I would suggest, I think I would start, quite honestly, by looking into the certification organizations as a starting point, particularly whether it's USA Track and Field or I think it's Roadrunners Club of America, RRCA,
Yep.
I believe is one.
Yep.
I'm a coach through UESCA, United Endurance Sports Coaching Academy, and I'm specialized. I have a certification through them in ultra running. I'm an ultra running coach, certified coach. So I took a
Mm-hmm.
course. I took their certification course that Jason Koop created. But where I'm going with it is that if you go to the USCA site, they have a list of their certified coaches and their credentials. We each build our own little page in there and a blip about ourselves. It's small. It's not a full page by any means. It's just a little
Mm-hmm.
blip. But it sends you it sends a link to my site, so you can come check out my page and what I'm about. So I think that'd be a great starting point. Am I the right fit for you? I, I'm I'm human and I have opinions and I come across with quirkiness and different things I bring to the table, and maybe that's not your cup of tea. And so even if I am in the space and I'm a certified coach and I have all the credentials, personality's got to be able to mix it as well and jive. And if it
Yeah.
doesn't, there are other coaches out there. So I'm not saying
Right.
that I don't think that the message is like, oh, this is where you find me and this is why you should hire me because I'm the best coach. I think really the message is find a coach that's the best fit for you personally, personality wise, and has the right accolades and the right experiences to get you to your goals, whatever they might be in ultra running.
Yeah. You make a great point. When so what I'm hearing from you is essentially like start with a trusted source. Like start with a trusted source, talk to some people, meet some people, feel things out, which I think is great. I had somebody local that I started with, which was great, and then kind of went more like the just who I saw on Instagram, and like had a couple of intake calls with just some people that were legit coaches, like good talks, good calls. I wasn't ready to pay their fees at the time, but here's the thing though, you get what you pay for. So when you're looking at these different like tiered approaches to coaching, I mean, I've seen it all. I've literally seen it all. So, how did you come up with your like? For me, I can say sincerely that the amount that I'm paying you is valuable to me. So I have zero qualms about the amount that I'm giving you because of the value that I feel I get from the program, the interaction, the whole deal. Um, So how did you, or what would you recommend if somebody's looking for a coach? Would it be based on goal, like if they're wanting just general fitness, if they're wanting more specific period specific training or race specific training, or and then keeping their budget in mind? Um, what does that look like?
So that's great. But all of my athletes don't have a 100 miler or 200 miler on the calendar. Some of my
Okay,
athletes are just trying to run. Quite honestly,
gotcha.
they're maybe thinking of a 50K in 2025.
Gotcha.
They want to ease into the sport and and get comfortable and go farther than their marathon, right? That they've done, the road
Mm-hmm.
marathon. So they're going to try a half marathon, but in the trail world, a trail half marathon of some sort, So
Sure.
some of them don't even have anything on the calendar right now. They're just training to get healthy. So
Gotcha.
the structure looks a little bit different. And I think you're definitely right. There's a ton of different options out there and availabilities, and you see, I see, and apparently you have as well in other coaches' price points where they have a, B, and C tiered approach, and
Mm-hmm.
in C you get, I don't know, 2 emails and a phone call and a pat on the back every 30 days. At the B level, you get 4 phone calls
Strava kudos. You get
in
six Strava
six Java
kudos.
kudos. Yeah, you get a box of Nilla wafers in the silver level, and in the
Right.
gold level, you get unlimited this, unlimited that, and I don't know. I don't take that approach. I don't have any tiers whatsoever. I have one cut rate. It's pretty common knowledge. It's on my website. You can click the pricing button. It's right out there. But I don't. If you're the athlete, well, you are the athlete, Collin. But if you're the athlete and you have a question for me, and you have a question about tomorrow morning's workout. You lay down tonight, you open up your app, and you're like, oh, it's something that I've never seen before. I don't really understand the verbiage, or I'm not sure. I'm not making sense of the
Mm-hmm.
workout. I don't want you to have to think, well, I've already sent 2 emails, and now I have to wait to the beginning of the month in order to send another email.
Mm.
I don't. So I don't think the tier process works. I want you to have the best resources possible, and so send me that text message right then. You're laying in bed.
Sure.
It's 10 o'clock at night in your house, and you're like, "Hey, coach, what the heck is what does 3 on 3 off mean? I don't even know what that means, right?" And so I'm like, "Oh, I'll just explain it to you a little bit better. I'll try to help you out as best as
Right.
possible." Or I'm exhausted and I'm thinking about changing the workout tomorrow, and so I'll dig in there and change the workout for you. It's not too big of a deal within reason.
Yeah.
I don't work all the time, but I do work all the time, quite honestly.
Sure.
But I don't think there's I don't want you to be restricted to thinking, if you've already used your allotment of emails, or I can only text them on Sundays, or whatever the rules are for these tiers. That's just not coaching. I'm trying to make you a better athlete, and and those and by trying to be a better athlete, those questions come up on Sunday night, and so send me the message, send it to me,
Yeah.
ask me the question. I'll get back to you whenever I can. More than likely, it's going to be within the hour, but sometimes it's not. Sometimes I'm sleeping, or I'm running, or I'm doing my family time. But most
We're
of the
doing
time, I'll get
freaking Arizona. That was dope. I just saw all those pictures. You had a time out there, huh?
for gosh, that was New
Weren't you just
Year's.
running in weren't you just running in Arizona?
Oh no, I was in Moab. I was in Utah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Just a few days ago, I was in Utah for a training day. Yeah.
Nice.
But actually,
Um,
in that same thread, though, you texted me. I was on my way to the trailhead, right?
yeah.
Yeah, and so I was getting back to you. I was driving one hand. I was doing all the things I probably shouldn't do. But I was driving with one hand, texting back to you, um,
Yeah.
and conversing with you and letting you know, hey, I'll get back to you in 6 hours when I'm back in
Yep.
cell service, because I'm going to go hit this trail and I'm going to lose service. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah. So whenever I could get back to somebody, I will. I, I'm
Yeah.
I'm
No,
not
it's been
just
great.
not responding because I can't. I'm usually not responding because I'm not in pocket to respond. So
So, as an ultra running coach, you mean to tell me that you are working occasionally behind a computer screen? You're not just on the trail all day, every day, doing lavish, peak to peak trail runs?
man, if I could, like, actually, that could be like a $500,000 idea, is to like get some sort of like laptop neck holder thing with a Starlink backpack, right? And just run around in the woods and type out
That'd be
programs for fun.
perfect.
No, but my day doesn't look as structured as what you would think.
Sure.
So most of my athletes have the stereotypical Monday through Friday, 8 to 5 type of job. They're anywhere in any time zone. And so those are the times that you guys, you, the athlete, Colin, are at work. So you don't have the question during the day. You have the
Right.
question at 5 o'clock at night when you're strapping on your shoes and you're like, what the heck is
Right.
this? Or I'm not feeling it, or can I change it for tomorrow? Right. And so I wound up working almost the opposite hours. I wound up working from 5
Oh,
o'clock
interesting.
until about 8 a.m. And I do naturally enjoy working at night quite a bit.
Hmm.
I'll stay up to midnight or 1 in the morning, easily slamming on the keys. But it allows me to go
Hmm.
run in the middle of the day. So people, when you look at my Strava, if you look at my Strava, you'll see I get runs in the middle of the day, but it looks like, oh, he's a running coach, he's running all day, but I am working all
Yeah.
night when the questions are actually coming in, when the data is coming in, when you're laying down and uploading your data and your comments. I'm actually able to keep up with it that evening as well.
Yeah. Dope. Yeah, it's been great. I really like the format. It's been super helpful. This is probably the first time we are still very early in our training cycle. Being that we're training right now for Leadville, which is in August, and it's currently March 20th. We're still pretty early in the training cycle, but this is probably the most relaxed that I've felt at this point in the stage. Because usually the beginning of a training block for me, now it's had its fair share of challenges, but I don't feel overrun or overworked. So that's one thing I've noticed about our training cycles so far is that I'm not super beat up already. And it's funny because I look at the plan and I'm like, this isn't a ton of running yet. And I know it'll come. And I say that now, a month from now, you're going to be like, okay, Colin, back to back 3 hour runs, Saturday, Sunday, or whatever the case is. But I think there's a tempered approach there. It seems like, would you say that, like, it just seems that's not naturally how I would do it. Like right now, I'd be hitting it hard, like time to get after it, you know, cranking out even harder. But it seems like you've continued to come back to me with, we need to build consistency, which it seems like a no brainer, but it's really true. And how do you build that consistency?
That's great. I think that's one thing that Training Peaks just excels at, quite honestly. Training Peaks is an app. It is. I always, if you don't know what it is, I feel like I explain it as being Strava on steroids. It is. It is like I get all your heart rate data. I get your elevation gain and loss in real time, not like Strava, like Kudos and that kind of junk.
Right.
I get all the metrics. I get your stride counts. I get all this crazy quirky data in there, and I could see everything. I could see when you stopped to pet the dog. I could see when you stopped to cross the highway. I could see all these little anomalies in the training process. And what that allows me to do in a remote role, because I'm not running with you and I don't know how that is.
Right.
What it allows me to do, or allows us to do, is to assess your fitness and where you're at the moment.
Hmm.
From the heart rate data, from your comments are always key as well. Just kind of knowing like what I think looks like a great run on paper or in the data. You
Right.
could say that was the worst run ever, or you say that was the best run ever. So then I'm
Sure.
weighing it on that as well. But then we're just planning accordingly and building numbers and building structure, getting in the consistency. And yeah, we're going to have some hard workouts coming up. But quite honestly, your event is in August, and we are again almost finishing March here. Um, and so we have time. Not that we can miss a beat, but we just need to ease into it, and that consistency, building that base, is just going to be key to the successes in
Yeah.
August that we're looking for later.
Dude, on a side note, so the 4x3s tonight was probably like my resting pace was like a 9:30. Not that pace is everything or anything like that, but where I was comfortable running was like a 9:30, 9:40. And then the 3 minutes on, I was doing it like a 6:30. So, and it felt really good. So we'll see how I feel tomorrow if I wake up and my knees are stuck in place or something like that. But um, no, it definitely, and I feel like that's a good result of the fact that it's been a couple months now. I don't even know, maybe two, coming up on 3 months. Maybe we've actually been grinding together, but yeah, the when I started, like even some of my shorter runs, like my heart rate would be jacked, and I'm finding myself going, oh, I'm like not even, I'm in like an 11 or 12 minute mile, which for me
Mhm.
that's like super endurance pace.
Mhm.
But my heart rate would not be matching, it would not be endurance heart rate
Mhm.
with endurance pace. So it's been pretty interesting to see that so far. So whatever wizardry is happening on the Training Peaks side, I think it's helping.
Yeah, it's consistency, Colin. It's doing it repetitively. You know, the more you put into it, the more you're going to get out of it. And not in pace and in volume, but the more you
Right.
have buy into the process. Um, I- I've been doing it for a while, and I'm really figuring out Training Peaks. I'm a level two. I have like all the certifications through Training Peaks. I'm a level two certified coach through Training Peaks. So I'm really using all the metrics to their best ability. Um, I'm not just using the app because it's
Mhm.
easy and I could communicate with you. I'm really trying to use the metrics to all their ability, because the buy-in is what I need. I need you to see the
Right.
results that you're just explaining to me tonight, from just 3-4 weeks ago, where you were struggling at that pace, or the heart rate didn't feel the same, or you weren't able to even get to that pace, but the heart rates were similar. So
Hmm.
so those little nuggets of buy-in really go a long way in the process, and I'm glad you're buying in. I mean, I feel like you've always been buying in, but you're seeing the results,
Yeah.
that's more buy-in on your end, which helps me to do my job a little bit easier as well.
How do you sift through the fads? Like personally, how do you, because everybody's got something to say about something that is, you can Google anything nowadays and you can find the answer supported or you can
We
find it debunked.
we had this conversation a few weeks ago, right, through a text thread, and
Yes.
I can't remember the thread topic. Remind me if you recall it.
Nose breathing.
Oh, nasal breathing. Oh man. Um,
But
yeah,
yeah, so like that's as an example, like we
that's a
could take
perfect
that one,
example. Yeah, that's a perfect
but like,
example
yeah,
because we
how
both
do you
Googled
sift
it. We
through
were
those?
both Googling and coming up with our arguments on our behalf. What right? And nothing wrong with that. But we were both able to
Yeah,
find, like, not credible, but content, right? Real
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
content, articles and articles upon articles
Right.
supporting my belief over your belief. And I don't know if we need to go there. But what I'm getting at is, how do,
Well, like, so for instance, let's take that one for an example.
okay.
So, like nasal breathing, I think the idea out there is that it helps you focus or it gets more brain or more oxygen to your brain sooner than if it's going to go through your lungs. There's not, the only thing that science really says about it is that sure, kind of if it helps you almost like a meditative type deal, but there's not a performance benefit from it
Mm-hmm.
necessarily. Or at least like the data does not show there is a performance benefit from it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's kind of like, okay, if you want to do it, sure, but there's not necessarily a performance benefit from it. So when you're going through that, like how did you find like that one that you sent me, that video was a very well, like the dude had literally studied the specifics. So how, when you're trying to debunk something other than just Googling it, how do you know who's legit?
For me personally, I guess I'll come from two
Yeah,
points of view first. For me personally, I got my key people I go look to on Instagram, or maybe not Instagram, but on the Google. I'll go to their
sure.
websites. I'll go into their search on their websites and try to find the keywords and phrases that I'm looking for. Um, and I'm not I'm not looking for the information to win an argument by any means. I'm just looking
Right.
for scientific information. And
Yeah.
that's really what I want to follow. I want to follow the science, if that makes any
Right.
sense at all. Um, but I guess if you don't know where to look, I think, so that's my point of view. That's where I come from. I look for
Sure.
the people in my corner that I follow, that I know can pull up a research paper and show me some statistical facts, or they come out and say, hey, here's a research paper, but it's not that great of a research paper.
Hmm.
It's kind of gray in some spots. It doesn't have enough data. It doesn't have enough data points. It doesn't have enough participants that had an adverse effect or change to
Sure.
warrant any scientific findings to be set in stone by any means. Um, but if I was a consumer and looking, I would look for actual research articles supporting
Hmm.
one person's perspective. Blogs. I mean, I could write a blog. I could write 2 blogs right now on that topic on why nasal breathing is super important and you should do it all day long, and why you should never nasal breathe and you should probably just put a clothespin on your nose and just only
Right.
mouth breathe, right? And I could put that out there because anyone could put anything out there in the web.
Sure.
But I think if you're looking for real factual information, the the people that you should be following should be able to support their findings through scientific data, research papers, and wherever that may come from.
Gotcha. So so let's look at another one. So like heart rate training, for instance. So there seems to be two camps, right? There's time on feet and miles. There's heart rate and pace, some camps, intertwine, some don't.
On that,
I've trained.
on your later analogy, I would even add in RPE as well. So
Okay,
heart rate,
yeah,
RPE, and maybe pace. But um, quite honestly, in my particular space, in our particular space of ultra running, we kind of shy away from pace. Pace is
right,
maybe more for the road marathoners. The road guys don't track
totally,
workouts. I'm going to do a 1 mile pace for 400, four
right,
400s at 1 mile pace. My 1 mile pace is a 6:10. I'm making numbers up. That's not my 1 mile pace by
sure.
any means. But pace is really for like the roadie type of scenario most of the time. Do we use it in
Got it.
ultra running? I'm sure somebody does. Do I? I don't think I ever talk about pace, quite honestly. I usually talk about
Sure.
RPE or heart rate. Um, and
So
to go to that point, though, to your
yeah,
point, I'm going to lead your question, I think, and tell me if I
yeah,
don't.
go
But
for it.
I I go back and forth, quite honestly. And you'll see it in your workouts. Monday's workout will say 5 to 6 RPE, easy recovery run, endurance
Hmm.
run, right? So you're just shaking off the cobwebs from the weekend. And then Tuesday's workout has heart rate dialed into it for interval work. And so I do fluctuate back and forth between the two. I think there's a good time and place for both of them. Yeah, I hope I answered your question.
Yeah,
I don't know.
no, you did, and I do like that. It's funny because when I do pop that up, sometimes I don't know if it's going to be a heart rate guided one or not. And so like when I popped up, I think yesterday's was a um 60-minute endurance run. And I was like, "Oh, cool." I was like, "Okay, sweet." So I had 60 minutes of just organically kind of keeping myself in that endurance pace rate. Wasn't thinking about my heart rate.
Mhm,
Um, and then there's others runs where that stuff does pop up, and you're wanting to maintain your effort a little bit closer.
mhm.
So how does that relate to training for a race that involves distance, and so because it involves distance and cutoffs, you you don't have to think about pace, but you are creating a rough, like, I know my pace for a 12-mile section. I know I kind of want to be at around a 12:30 average from start to make wing. Like I know that's where I want to be. Um, so how do you take your training and then expand that so that you uh, are covering a distance and a time frame, and like just meshing that all together for a race day type preparation?
Yeah, that's good. That's a great question. I don't know if I have like a clean answer for you. I think in the process of the training plan, the blocks, the structure, just the build up all the way to the event, um, those are great conversations to have with
Mm,
athletes like a month out from the race, being like, okay, what are your goals? We had a goal. You have a goal right now for Leadville, um, and as we get closer, I've always said that we're going to talk about that goal, and it may
Right.
modify it as we get closer to the event. So as we get closer to that event, it, it may change, it may shift. You may be quicker, you may not be quicker. You might be right on the target that we have set when we started this process a few months ago. And so I think it's kind of always ebbing and flowing, and it's always evolving. It just depends on how much, I don't know. You might hit the lottery tomorrow and have all the time in the world to train, right? And I don't know if that's the answer to make you faster by any means, but it is going to
Sure.
allow you a lot more freedoms to come out and maybe train at altitude because you live in Tennessee. Whereas right now we have regular jobs, and it's just not maybe in the cards, right? So I
Sure.
think that's a question. I think that's a question better suited for like pre-race meetings, like 4 weeks
Right.
out.
Right.
We're talking about crew. We're talking about your plan of attack, and we're talking about your paces. Can you sustain at a moderate effort a 12.5 minute pace for those first 13 miles? Or is it going to be too much? Do you need to back off a little bit? Do you need to run a 13-minute pace in order to save yourself for later in the race? Because
Sure.
12.5 minutes isn't going to make or break your cutoff at May Queen outbound.
Right.
Um,
Yeah.
and maybe it's a 13-minute pace that's going to be more comfortable for you based on the data that
Sure.
comes in through TrainingPeaks and just kind of what we see in trends. And you'll have a better understanding of it too. So it's a conversation where it's less me about saying, I think you could do this. It's a conversation where
Hmm.
we're agreeing like, oh, we think you feel really good at 12.5 minutes. Maybe you could run 12. Who knows?
Hmm.
So, so I don't know if there's um, a direct
Yeah.
stream to like getting to that 12.5 minute pace for the first 13 miles of a 100 miler.
Sure.
But I think it's a conversation that coaches should be having with their athletes um, pre-race meetings.
Gotcha. So, yeah, there's a wide spectrum in there between the pre-race strategies and then also training in the meantime. But um, ultimately, our workouts are time based. So, what's the methodology on doing time based workouts versus like setting mileage and then
So
saying like, yeah,
mhm. I think we're in a phase right now, Colin, where you are doing time-based workouts. Quite honestly,
gotcha,
there'll be a time this summer where you'll be. I'll ask you to do specific distances on your long runs, um,
gotcha,
on your Wednesdays, on your Wednesday endurance runs. Will start to become a distance number as opposed to a duration number, because I also
gotcha.
want you to. I also want you to hit those benchmarks of just time on feet is important. Don't get me wrong. And just how I cross over between heart rate and RPE,
Gotcha.
I do cross over between heart rate, or I'm sorry, between time on feet or time duration and
Hmm.
distance. If I tell you to run for 5 hours, you, Colin, I'm making up numbers, but I'm gonna say in 5 hours you're gonna run 25 miles. That's a 12-minute mile, um, as an example. If you tell me to run for 5 hours, maybe I'm only running 20 miles. I'm running 4 miles an hour. And so the numbers don't add up. And so if I have that
Right.
athlete that I kind of need to push to get the distance done, I'll
Hmm.
scrap the time frame and I'll say, hey, I need you to run 25 miles this weekend. I don't care
Right.
if I've been within reason. I don't care if it takes you 6 hours or 5 hours. We need to get the actual distance done. And then there's a mental game to that too. If you're training for a
Sure.
50K and you've done a 22 miler, you're nearly there. You got 10 more miles to go, which are tough. Don't get me wrong, tough miles to have. But you start to get that mental game like, oh, like I was only doing 12 miles in my 4 hour run, but coach said to go out for 22. And now I got 22 done. And now I know what I'm able to do at 22 miles. And I know what that time frame looks like. So I think just in our particular case on where we're at, it looks like it's
Yeah.
a lot of duration based workouts, and it is. Um, but we'll transition over for sure to distance based workouts as well and throw them in.
Well, see, that's fascinating because the thread that I'm pulling through all of this is that there's no pre-prescribed playbook, and it's really really interesting. I think so. So you have to be flexible as a coach and be flexible with people's goals, but also hold them, and that so you're helping guide that process. not just by saying, well, I am a time-based coach. Like I don't mess around with that mileage stuff, or I prescribe miles. I don't care how long it takes to get it done. Here's the miles from start to finish. So you're saying that based on where an athlete is, what their goal is, was, or will be, and then also how you are going to help them get there. So I've told you this is my goal. I told you this is my aptitude. Then you're going to flip that around and say, okay, here's how I'm going to get them there. So that's in essence, that's the value that comes with having a coach.
Mhm. Definitely. Um, it's a unique spot to be in, to be an ultra running coach. I mean, I'm putting pressure on you to do a workout because you are putting pressure on me for a result. And,
Yeah.
and then there's an exchange of money there, right? And so like
Yeah.
I'm trying to get you out the door and do the workout, and yet you're paying me to do, like, it's such a weird um just play on the whole concept, right?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, for sure. Your plan, Collin, is probably, I'm taking a guess, but I bet it's probably done out just until we're on Wednesday this week. I bet it's maybe through next week, if at all. So when I do rewrite your plan for the next 2 weeks in advance, I'm looking at the data that you've already put in there. I'm looking at the consistency that I was asking you to do,
Sure.
and that you've established now, and it sounds like it's paying off a little bit from tonight's run. I'm looking for the consistency that you have. I'm looking for the numbers, the metrics. I'm looking for all those little colorful numbers on the right hand bar of your
Hmm.
TrainingPeaks, and I'm prescribing based on that. So you won't see. I don't have your plan dialed in until August, and I'm like, set it and forget it. No, I'm really working individually with what you're putting on the table, what I'm asking you to do, and what that's looking like. So when I start to see those 2 hour runs, maybe you were running, I don't know, and I can't think of a great example off the top of my head, but sometimes when I know I need to put pressure on somebody, I'll change from the 4 hour run, and I'll say, hey, you know what, you need to go 17 miles. Like,
Right.
in 4 hours, you've pet every dog, you've stopped at every stop sign, you've drank from every water
Right.
fountain, and
Yeah.
you've only done 12 miles. Like, you actually need to get the miles in now. So now I'm going to go the other direction, and it's just
Right.
another way of putting pressure on. Like, I'm going to say you have to run 17, and I'm not going to put a timestamp on it. So if you want to pet all the dogs and you want to go to all the water fountains and you want to stop at every stop sign, um, go right ahead. But you still have to. I'm asking you to still do 17 miles, right? So
Sure.
that was the goal. Yeah.
Super interesting. It's fascinating. I mean, that's why I have you as my coach, man. I love the intentionality with it, and yeah. I mean, it's you get out what you put in, right? I could pay you and type in some notes and go on some half-assed runs, and at the end of the day, not be super satisfied with my results, or I could really give it what I can, having all the family and work and all the fun stuff that we all have, um, and and then get some darn good results at the end of the day with it. So yeah, man, I really appreciate it. I would love to just kind of have a chance for you to say where people can find you. This has been super helpful, I think, for me, and I'm excited to be able to share this with the people that are going to get to watch it. And so I'd love for them to be able to find you as well. So if you want to plug your socials and your website, I'd be happy for that.
Well, thanks for having me, Colin. It's been fun. I love working with athletes in general. I've We just started working together probably in the last, like you mentioned, 3 months or so.
Hmm.
But we've been in contact and known each other since 2021. We met at Twin Lakes inbound, and it was like a. Did we meet before the race?
We did, yeah, we did,
It was probably pretty brief.
yeah.
But basically it
I
was like,
remember.
hey, what's your name? What's your deal? And you're like, I'm Colin. Let's go.
Yep,
So
that
interesting
was
enough.
it.
So I enjoy all the time on the trail, and all
Yeah,
our
man.
little tidbits, and we always have some good text threads going on. So I enjoy those as well. That I think you get my lack of sense of humor because I'm not really funny, but I am on altitude endurance coaching.com. It's pretty simple. I have a Facebook page under that name. I have an Instagram page under that name. I have a Facebook page just with my regular name, Brian Pasenti, Passenti, and I have an Instagram page. It is Pasenti on the Run, um, and that's about it. I'm on LinkedIn, probably somewhere else too. Oh, I got a YouTube show, a podcast with Simon Garrard. He and I do a show called Buckle Up with Simon and Brian, all about ultra running. So check that out if you're interested. Those also transfer over to podcast world as well. So
Nice. Well, I'll put links to everything in the description below, the all of the links for everything that we've talked about. Funny story about Simon, I just remembered. So, uh, I guess that would I guess that would have been 22. So the year I finished Leadville, 2022. You know where Hagerman Road turns, you get back onto the Colorado Trail?
mhm. I know exactly where it
So,
is.
yeah, like literally we can picture it, right? So Hagerman Road, you make that little left. So right there, I see like a girl kind of like facing this way with her hand on somebody, and a guy like head down. And it's like still dark. It's probably like 3:30, 4 o'clock in the morning. We're heading inbound, and we're delirious. You know how I get at night, especially on Powerline. Every time, dude, when I was pacing Steven this last year, I was getting super. I swear it's the energy in the air or something. Because on Powerline inbound, every year I get super loopy, dude. It's weird.
Mm.
But anyway, so coming down the backside, and I'm like, Simon! And his wife looks up at me. It's his wife. She looks up almost like startled. And I go, oh, I was like, I'm sorry. Because he was just kind of like, and she goes, he's sleeping. And I was like, oh. So I like tiptoe past. But like he's literally just sitting there, but asleep.
Yeah,
Anyway, I thought that was
yeah. You don't do that, Colin? We all do that.
dude. The thing is, it made me feel like I haven't run enough hundreds in a calendar year because he obviously that was not his only hundred. Like, because he runs many hundreds, right?
He's roughly
But
about
so
100 a month. I think he's at 3 years at that. He's probably over 35, 34
yeah,
hundreds. I'm taking a pretty close guess, but I'm not super certain on that. But
yeah.
it's roughly 100 a month. Yeah, 12 a year.
So please go follow Simon as well and his channel. I'm excited to listen to your podcast as well. Super random how I met him as well. Met him through another Leadvillian family. How did met them at the
You met at
banquet,
the banquet dinner on Thursday night. Yeah,
and we only
and
sat with them.
that was basically our whole connection as well,
Yeah,
because we were with I know um, Mickey and Tracy, and you sat with
right.
them at the banquet, and then you sat with Simon and Nora
Hmm.
at the banquet, and then I met Nora at the tent that day at Twin Lakes, waiting for you to come in so I could pace you home. So
Right.
yeah, it was just kind of this whole weird round robin
So
of
you didn't know
connections.
Simon before that year?
No,
Oh, that's
we
awesome.
met at that rate. Actually, I met Nora. I didn't meet Simon until
Yeah,
the
yeah,
finish
yeah.
line.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, dude, that's so crazy. That's so funny how that. And I actually met Mickey's wife at Sugarloafing
Okay.
randomly. I was like washing my dishes and was like, "Hey, how's it going?" This was during the mountain bike race, and she's like, "How are you?" I'm like, "I'm here for the race." She's like, "Oh, me too. My husband's running." And we were like talking about like, I was like, "Yeah, my coach has me like I'm doing, this run today, that run tomorrow. Like we're trying to get some altitude before the race." And then I sit down with her at dinner that next night. So small world, small town.
Yeah, it's a small
But
campground
lots
at
of fun.
Leadville.
It's also, yeah, it is a small campground. Have you ever stayed down at like whatever that one is down the road from Sugarloafing, the public one, public access?
Not for the event. It's called Old Chicago. You mean just like the off-grid camping area? Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
down below the dam road.
yeah.
Yeah. The I don't know where I got the name Old Chicago, or Little Chicago. I'm sorry. It's referred
Okay,
to locally as Little Chicago. And when I go up there and train, I'll go park in there and either sleep in
Yeah.
my vehicle, or if I tow my camper up, I'll sleep there as well. My camper, I think it was a year later, but I upgraded my camper. Now I got solar capabilities and bigger batteries.
Nice.
So I am able to go off grid a little bit more. But I always stay at Sugarloaf with the family during race week. Yeah.
It's a good one, man. Sugarloafing is never let me down. Got to get those bookings in early though.
Yeah, you
All
do.
right, man.
Yeah.
Well, dude, thanks again for joining. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Colin. I appreciate your time. We'll talk
All
soon.
right. See you, man.